What's up, guys? Welcome back to this series of video about macroeconomics. In this third video, we are gonna talk about employment and unemployment. So this is gonna be the structure of our video. First, we're gonna give the definitions of both. Then we're gonna look at different types of unemployment. Then we're going to look at useful calculations, the relation to financial markets, and finally the news about employment and unemployment that are released and impact the markets. So these last 2 points are kind of tied together. Okay, so let's move on with the first point. What is employment and what is unemployment? So employment, as you might guess, it means when people have jobs, both full-time and part-time. Unemployment, on the other side, includes people who don't have a job but are actively looking for one. And this is an important distinction because unemployment doesn't include all people without jobs, but only people who are actively looking for a job. Okay, so let's go on and see these distinctions with visuals. Okay, so here we have all the people who are actively working, okay, whatever the job might be, and consider that also entrepreneurs are considered in the employment side because they are self-employed. Okay, so this is gonna represent our employment. Then these two people right here, they don't have a job, but they are actively sending a resume to companies and talking to different managers, different HRs to try to get a job. So this is gonna be our unemployment side of it. So this third category right here, I put an image of presumably an old guy, so, and a student. So why these people are not included in the unemployment or unemployed population? Because the retired person is not looking for a job, and here we include, for instance, students who are full-time students and are not looking for jobs. So retired plus full-time students, and it can also be just adults who are not looking for jobs, or maybe they don't have a legal contract, so there's no way for the Bureau of Labor Statistics to know that they are employed in this case, or eventually looking for jobs. So now that we know the distinction between employed, unemployed, and retired or full-time students or other people who are not looking for jobs, we can introduce the concept of labor force. Labor force equals employed plus unemployed people. So let's try to understand why this labor force concept is quite important. Let's say that the unemployment rate is going down. Intuitively, this means that more people are getting jobs, right? But it could also go down because unemployed people have decided to stop looking for jobs. Okay, so for instance, an unemployed Let's say once I graduate from college, I'm looking for jobs. I'm not finding any jobs, but I'm looking for it. So I'm part of the unemployed category. After searching a job for a few months, I decide that I want to go back to grad school. So once I become a full-time student again and I'm not looking for jobs anymore, I'm exiting the unemployed category. So this also causes the unemployment rate to go down. So that is why we need to be careful when the unemployment rate goes down. Does it go down because more people are getting jobs, or does it go down because people who were actively looking for jobs have stopped looking for jobs? So this is why it's important to compare the unemployment rate with the labor force participation rate. And so basically this labor force participation rate measures the percentage of working age people who are either working or looking for jobs. And the calculation for it is our labor force divided by working age population times 100 to put it in percentage. So if unemployment rate goes down and also our labor force participation rate goes down, this means that the decrease in unemployment is due to people leaving the research for a job. Whereas if our unemployment goes down and our labor force participation rate stays the same or goes up, it means that more unemployed people have found a job. Okay, so how do you calculate also unemployment? Simply unemployed over labor force times 100 to put it in percentage. Okay, now that we have seen the distinction between employment, unemployment, and people who are not in the labor force, we can talk about the different types of unemployment we have. So this is not like a major concept you need to know, but it's something just to keep in mind. And the four types of unemployment we have: frictional, structural, cyclical, and seasonal. Okay, frictional unemployment is just short-term unemployment between jobs. So for instance, you leave your job, but after just a couple months you get another job, you will be part of the frictional unemployment. Structural unemployment, it is when there is a skills mismatch between the worker and the job he has to perform. So basically when workers' skills become outdated. For instance, imagine a country, a random country and a small town in that country where a lot of people work in a coal mine, and over time the country and consequently also the small town move towards renewable energy like solar energy, wind energy, whatever. These people's skills to work in the mine will become outdated, and so they will be included in the structural unemployment. Another example is when technology replaces you, and we have seen this a lot with AI that is taking over a lot of jobs. So those people are not unemployed because of a lack of jobs in general. They're unemployed because a better technology is replacing them or their skills become outdated. Then we have cyclical unemployment, which basically means when a country is in a recession, there's gonna be job layoff. And seasonal unemployment is, for instance, a lifeguard that is gonna work in the summer, but then in the winter is not gonna have a job if, of course, the country gets cold in the winter. So this is just one thing to keep in mind about different types of unemployment. So this could also be why in certain time periods we have more or less unemployment based on seasonality, or if we are in an economic expansion or recession, if we have improvement in the technology, or in the example of the small town, we transition towards a system where the workers are not qualified to perform the job anymore. Okay, and frictional is just in between jobs, short term. So based on what we have seen so far, what do you think it would be a good unemployment rate? So if you think about 0%, so it means all the labor force is working, so all the labor force is employed, we have a 0% unemployment rate. This could be seen as good for some of you, but this is actually not good. This is not good for the economy. So first of all, it's almost impossible in the real world to have zero unemployment rate, because there's always people relocating, industry shrinking and lay off people. Other industries are expanding and finding new technology. So in this case we have structural unemployment coming into play. But let's say that somehow we reach the 0% unemployment rate. Why this is bad? Well, this 0% unemployment rate, think about it. If all the people in the labor force are employed, different firms, different industries will fight hard to get the workers they need. So this would cause a spike in wages. And a spike in wages can lead to quick inflation to rise, which we know that is not good for the economy. And we will talk more about inflation in the next video of this series. And also, another thing, the productivity is gonna suffer. Why? Because not all jobs would be a good fit for people. In this case, industries and firms are just trying to get workers, but they're not getting the best workers for that particular job. So the productivity in every industry would suffer a lot. So we have something called natural rate of unemployment, that is around 45% usually. It can be a little bit less, a little bit more, but there's always a natural rate of unemployment, which is actually very healthy for the economy, because there's, as I said, there's always people leaving jobs and finding new ones. So looking for a better job, maybe from a salary perspective or from a skills matching perspective. So if the unemployment level rises above this natural rate of unemployment, and I'm not talking about like 5.001%, I'm talking about 6%, 7%, or more. This could be a problem because it could be a signal of economic slowdown or recession, and so this would lead to weaker demand for goods and services, because people who have lost their job will have less purchasing power. Another reason could be that businesses are cutting jobs. And so we will see in this video when like unemployment data raises a lot. This could be one of the signals for central banks to cutting interest rates or giving out stimulus to the population to try to help the unemployed people, but also stimulate the economy to eventually create more jobs, etc., etc. If on the other side the unemployment rate goes below the natural rate, and again I'm not talking about 0.01% lower, I'm talking about, let's say, 2% or 1%, or I'm talking about like 3 to 1%. This could sound good, but going back to the problem we had above about the 0%, by now you should be able to say that it's not very good for the economy either, because there could be a labor shortage, so companies struggle to find the right workers for a specific job. Wage inflation, as I said, if less workers are available in the market, it forces companies to raise the wages to attract more workers, and in the end this could lead to general inflation, as we have seen before. And so if the rate goes below the natural rate of unemployment, this could cause a overheated economy, and it could be a signal for central banks to raise interest rates to slow down the pace of the economy. So how all of this is related to financial markets? Well, we have already talked a little bit about it. So all these people, investors, central banks, economists, etc., care a lot about this data. Why? Because high unemployment, what did we say? People spend less, so we slow down the economy, and so there could be a possible lowering of interest rates. On the other hand, strong job growth could mean that people spend more, inflation might raise, and possible raising of interest rate to cool down the economy. And this is all a cycle because we go from periods where there's higher unemployment to periods where there's less unemployment. So interest rates are raised and lowered in cycles. For instance, in the last months, Trump has been complaining to the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell about lowering interest rates, but the economy was actually looking solid, employment rate were good, and Jerome Powell had the goal to lowering inflation rate to 2%. So if there's no signs of economy slowdown or higher unemployment or all the other data that could signal that the economy is not healthy, there is technically not actual reason to lower interest rates. This is why central banks play a crucial role in the economy, because they have to get this right. Otherwise, imagine that we have high unemployment and they raise interest rate. This will cause even higher unemployment. So there are different news that we want to pay attention to. We have NFP, which are non-farm payrolls. We have actually our beloved unemployment rate, then what we have seen before, labor force participation rate, initial jobless claims, JOLTS reports, which represent job openings, and labor turnover, ADP, non-farm employment change, average hourly earnings, employment cost index, so these are all the news we need to pay attention to when evaluating employment versus unemployment, labor force, and all the things that we have seen so far. Of course, some are more important than others. For instance, the NFP, non-farm payrolls, is released monthly and it's probably the highest impact news we have in the markets, and it measures the number of new jobs created, excluding farming, government, and non-profit. And this is usually a big market mover, especially when the actual data that comes out differs from the expected. Then we have already talked about unemployment rate and labor force participation rate, and these are also very important and powerful, especially when they are used together, because as we have seen, unemployment rate could go down, but it could mean either that more people found jobs or unemployed people stopped looking for jobs. Then initial jobless claims measures the number of new people who are filing for unemployment for the first time, and this is released weekly, so he has a higher frequency data to monitor the shorter term unemployment change. Then we have JOLTS reports that measures job openings, quits, hires, and This is another important data because it indicates the demand for labor and confidence in the job market, because a high number of quits means that workers are confident they will find a better job. Otherwise, they would not quit their current job. The ADP non-farm employment change measures private payrolls, so jobs that are added and lost in the private sectors, and usually this gives us a preview of NFP, but the two data, so the ADP non-farm employment change always comes out first and then NFP. So this could give us an indication for NFP, but as here we measure only the private sectors, sometimes, if not most of the times, the two are not in line. But still, it's looked as an indication to predict non-farm payrolls. Then we have average hourly earnings, and it simply measures the change in wages, and it's a decent indication because great wage growth, as we have seen before, can be a signal for potential inflation and ultimately for central bank policy. But this data is often included in the NFP, so that's why I said at the beginning NFP is our main, one of our main news reports. And finally, we have Employment Cost Index, or ECI, which simply measures wages, benefits, and salaries, and it just gives us a broader view of compensation trends. So with this, we have concluded our video, and just to give you a quick summary of what we have looked at, we have looked at the definition of employment and unemployment, people who are employed, people who are unemployed, it means that they are actively looking for jobs, and this includes and the two together represents our labor force. And then we have our people who are not actively looking for jobs. Maybe they are retired, maybe they are full-time students, maybe they are stay-at-home parents, that they're not included in this calculation. Then we have seen how to calculate employment rate, so unemployed people over labor force times 100 to make it a percentage. We have seen that unemployment rate going down doesn't always indicate more people getting jobs, and we have to relate this data to the labor force participation rate to actually see if those people have found jobs or they've stopped looking for one. Then different types of unemployment. What's the best unemployment rate? Why 0% unemployment rate is not good? What are the consequences of lower unemployment rate or higher unemployment rate? And finally, how this relates to financial markets, why investors, central banks, economists care about this data, what high unemployment or job growth could represent, and why this is a cycle, and finally, all the news related to this topic. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next video where we will talk about inflation.